Hello, my name is Alexis Fuller, and I will be presenting to you about why I think we should ditch standardized testing and open our minds to projects and portfolios in the school area, especially more for final testing areas, and just normal testing as well. So, who said that test scores had to be the end all? A student might understand a subject super duper in depth, may be able to fully recite everything that they have learned, but when they get to the test, might not understand anything. That is most of the time due to test anxiety. Some students are just forgetful. However, most students have test anxiety, which turns out that when you take a any form of test, a student might forget most of their knowledge or might kind of kick it all out the door once they get to the test from the anxiety and the build up to the day of taking the test and studying all week and them trying to focus on it. And anyone who might be good at taking tests might not know anything about a subject and might be really good at taking a test and just get every answer right. That would be insane. But my stance is that schools should move away from standardized testing and use projects and portfolios to better measure student learning, creativity, and real world skill. So I feel that instead of relying heavily on these standardized tests, schools should use projects and portfolios. These will show a complete picture of your students' abilities, showing their critical thinking skills, their creativity, and their long term understanding of the subject that you taught them. Now, when we test students, at least for me, as a student, I ditched all of the information right after the test. I was not remembering that. And I mean, as students doing their new forms of testing, as students do their new form of testing, which is what I'm saying, the projects and the portfolios, they will get to know more about their topic and over time start to retain that knowledge. Because I mean, I promise you that none of those students taking tests on their biology molecules are going to remember those next year. But the problem with standardized testing for me is that first, it measures memorization and can only focus on one section at a time. This causes teachers to have to teach by the book and to fit everything into the one set of learning, and that teachers must stick to this one set of way to teach these subjects. My second problem with this is that it's all of this high stress or anxiety is just caused for a one time performance. Students who suffer with high anxiety, like me as a student, um, feel like they have more stress on them, and this leads to the student being more overwhelmed and burdened by the test, causing the student more likely to focus on the stress that they feel more than the materials. And then the last point is that not all students learn the same way as their classmates, because a score does not always represent a student's actual knowledge or effort on the topic. Now, why are portfolios better? Portfolios show that a student's growth over time. Um, they show students' growth over time. They show many different assignments a kid completes. Um, any assignment that they complete in your class most likely will go in a portfolio, and this is mainly just to conjoin every single piece of artwork or work that they worked on in your class, depending on what class you're in. In my example, we shall say that we are in a science class in 8th grade. Now, a portfolio in a science class would be all of the lab experiments that we worked on throughout the year. Something else we could put in our portfolio would be any of the critiquing that their other peers gave them, maybe for a science experiment that they set up, or possibly something that they can communicate with other people. Now, portfolios show many different assignments because you literally take every assignment that you feel is noteworthy and you shove it into this portfolio. Now, the only thing that makes it a portfolio is if someone reflects on what they learned. So, the end of the portfolio, instead of just jamming all of that in there and shoving it to the teacher and saying, grade this, the kid has to actually reflect on what they learned and what they what they were thinking and what they were taught and how they felt throughout this process, which I feel is more beneficial for students, and it shows true progress when you can see the difference between the beginning of their year grades and the end of year grades. I mean, I just think it's a world of difference when you see the benefits of your teaching through the beginning of the year if you do like a pre-test and then doing a post-test with your kids. I just think that the benefits would be amazing, and then portfolios show progress. Obviously, if you're seeing that a kid is doing worse and worse on a test, then you're going to wonder why. But if they're doing better and better, then portfolios are going to benefit that. But Alexis, standardized tests provide consistent data for the different needs of the district. So why should we change it? While this may be true, unfortunately, the consistency of standardized testing sometimes causes unfairness. Students can have different strengths, different learning styles, and life circumstances, which projects and portfolios can better show and better adapt around. A student might not have time to study if they are stressing about what they're going to eat tomorrow. However, if they are working on a project or a portfolio, they can work on that in class, or they can work on it during recess. They can work on it whenever they're feeling like it at home if they have time for that. They could probably do it with the teacher like after school, maybe before school, just having more times to offer these for students, and they don't necessarily have to be in a silent room. It just has to be them working on it. It's not a big like you have to focus, you have to pay attention kind of thing. A project and a portfolio, you can just sit there and you can just chat it out. You can do research, which I think is super beneficial for kids because, especially since they're still learning, their little minds get to look that all up and they get to think about that. So, on this page, we're going to talk about all of my sources and the benefits that all of my sources have given. So, these are just the things that might impact a student while testing. So, Donahue et al. Found that the students who were eligible for the free and reduced lunch price program had lower average reading scores than the students who were not eligible for the program at all grade levels tested. Now, students who struggle to pay for lunches normally are more likely to struggle in the socioeconomic category and end up struggling more on testing. Now, socioeconomic status is someone's income, education, and status level. This shows that students who unfortunately did not have enough money at home to maybe pay for their own lunch or bring their own lunch, and are on the reduced lunch price low program, they unfortunately have lower grades and lower test scores, and it is shown that more people who were on that were the people who ended up having more reduced test scores. So, um, another article talks about how, number two over here, on average, students' levels of cortisol were 18% higher in their homeroom in the high stakes week relative that the same students' homeroom cortisol at baseline. So this is talking about how students had a test on 1 week and they measured their cortisol a week without stress and a week with stress, and the week with stress was a big test at the end of the week. So measuring those students' cortisols throughout the week, they were 18% higher throughout the week when they had a test. That would stress me out too. Um, in the next article, Testing Stress and Performance, they start their test by saying, we see the sharp rise in the cortisol awakening response 15 to 60 minutes after waking, followed by the falling cortisol. As time passes, the pattern visibly differs in the high stakes testing week with a less pronounced CAR and much different high levels of cortisol during the homeroom period, showing that during testing weeks, students are more stressed. And this is coming from the same article as source number two. So this is really just backing up source number two. And then my last one, replacing exams with project based assessment. It talks about how these students took a test, and it is evident that students perform better in the mid semester exam compared to the final exam. This can be attributed to the final exam having a greater level of difficulty and a possibly higher level of student and anxiety and stress. Now, this is saying that more students are scoring higher on the midterm. That shows that in standardized testing rules, students knew more at the midterm than the final, which is crazy because shouldn't you be teaching them more beneficially? Now, why it needs to change. In today's day, we need to be preparing our students for college and career. We need to be preparing them for creativity and problem solving. Different issues they might have outside in the world they might have to deal with, I feel like, are more beneficial that we need to be teaching them than how to teach them different things that you need to learn for the MAP test. Now, also with college and careers, I feel like more things that need to be taught to students are not necessarily things that need to be taught through standardized testing or taking tests. Now, students can learn how to write a check just by doing it with their partner, or they can learn how to um, solve an issue with their neighbor out in with their friends. Like, no standardized testing is needed to learn how to problem solve and learn how to be creative. And then no standardized testing is going to prepare anyone for college or their career, because realistically, portfolios and projects are more likely to be used in your career and in your college time. Because realistically, the only time that I've had a test in college that's been super duper bad was freshman year, and it was for PLS 101. Um, Realistically, the rest of my projects and the rest of my college time has been projects and portfolios. And unfortunately, um, fortunately, I have gotten the choice of having a lot of projects. So, um, but portfolios and projects really provide real world skills for students. They get to um, work on doing real world research. They can go out and maybe different portfolios or different projects involve different interviewing, different finding out of things. These also, projects and portfolios help students with creativity and time management. If a student is not on time and not ready for the task they have at hand, they shall struggle and they shall not submit their things on time. Now, collaboration and communication. Mainly for this one, I'm talking more about the communication because most collaboration will only happen if they do group projects. Now, if they do group projects, the collaboration is amazing. I mean, problem solving is something that is super duper prominent when you do collaborating projects with other partners, but also with communication, just communicating with the teacher that your project is slowly getting done or slowly doing check ins with your teacher, kind of thing. And then reduce test anxiety. Students aren't going to be worried about a test if they have to do a project and they're more worried about the project being more percent of their grade than the test, you know? So, in conclusion, the disadvantages of students not being test ready is not benefiting the students or the teachers, because their district are losing money. They're not getting to know their students or teaching them practical skills and things for their future. Thank you so much for your time.